I find it interesting to say the least is by adding a subsection. He's talking about prior to March 1st, 2012, the Premier shall determine the date of the next general election in consultation with the leaders of the opposition parties representing the Legislative Assembly, and for subsequent general elections, a consultation and determination of the date shall occur no later than 6 months following polling date in the most recent general election. Mr. Chair, I've been listening to the debate on this particular bill, and I find Bill 21, the Election Amendment Act, a bill that has, and I think I counted it less than 150 words, actually has caused so much discussion on such a small piece of legislation. I can tell you, Mr. Chair, that I wanted to listen to the debate and hear what everyone has to say in regards to this particular Amendment A2. And while I think the idea is admirable, and it would be nice to be able to sit down with all of the House leaders from the opposition parties, which would, of course, be the government, the Liberals, obviously the Wild Rose, the NDP, and the Alberta Party, to talk about trying to find a date that the opposition parties would find agreeable. I think we probably would be struggling on coming up with something between 5 different parties. And so I still like the idea of a fixed election and say, here, Alberta people, this is where we go to the polls. This is the date. You know that that's the date that's going to be coming forward. I guess where everybody's struggling, and we haven't heard that I can recall, but we've already put in some long nights, anything from the government members, and I always find that interesting that none of the government members have an opinion on any of the pieces of legislation that are brought forward in the legislature. And I have to say, Mr. Chair, when I was with the government, I always admired the opposition, that they could get up and they could speak on any piece of legislation and speak quite eloquently, quite frankly, and seemed quite knowledgeable about any piece of legislation that they were speaking about. And so, yes, so it's been a big learning curve for me coming from the government, where you have everything at your fingertips. You have millions of dollars searched and researched. You've rarely, if you're lucky, have the opportunity to speak on a piece of legislation. And whether you agree with it or you disagree with it, you kind of just sit there collecting dust and listening to what everybody else has to say, and you're thinking, I would just like to speak a little bit about this piece of legislation. And I know that there are some people over there, quite frankly, that support fixed election dates. And I know that there are people over there for sure that don't support the 0508 legislation, because we've had conversations with them. And I know for a fact that there are people over there in the government side that are struggling with the Health Quality Amendment Act. And so, you know what, Mr. Chair, it's fuel for the fire for us, because we're going to be coming to an election very shortly. Because I know for a fact that the government is going to candidate school in February. So that is a very telling thing. And so why, and I've spoken in this legislature way back on fixed elections and how I supported it, and I still support that particular piece of legislation. So even to try and get the 6 parties forward that the member from the NDP has brought forward, even to just start the process is, in my mind, better than nothing. And we could at least talk about, okay, well, as we could look like we're all going to get together and we're all going to sit and we're all going to talk about what ultimately is the most important thing, and that's what's in the best interest of Albertans. And we're going to, I know, be debating this legislation probably long into today or long into the night tonight. And I know for a fact that we're going to bring several more amendments forward on this legislation. I know I am. And I know my colleague from Window.wmv is going to, and because we think it's important to spend hours and hours and hours debating on a bill that's less than 150 words. And I think that's our role as an opposition member, to bring forward what Albertans are telling us, quite frankly. Whether we like it or we don't like it, and I've been in that situation where I'm bringing forward, when I was with the government, a piece of legislation that Albertans aren't really comfortable with. And yet we sit there and we sit there and we sit there and then we all vote, because we were the majority at the time. And so here we are, I guess, how many of us are there? I can't even, 5, wait a minute. I know my friend from Calgary, Buffalo will tell 15 or so members, where we all stand up and vote. So, Mr. Chair, I guess when we're talking about the Amendment A2, you don't need to wave your piece of paper at me. I know about what I'm talking about, but thank you for reminding me. I appreciate that, because sometimes we get a little off kilter, and it's your role as the chair to say, Chairs, just make sure that we stay on this particular amendment, that I'm going to support this, actually, and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this. I know. Because I quite frankly think somewhere, somehow, we need to get the process started. And in our caucus, we believe in free votes. And that's the nice thing about free votes, because I know our colleague from Window.wmv said that he wasn't. But I think we have to start the process somewhere. And this is a process that we can start. That doesn't preclude that once we pass this legislation, or this particular amendment, we're on a roll, and we can get a fixed date period, because, you know, then we can all have the same opportunity to discuss that, okay, we've, as opposition, have said, okay, we've got the amendment going, A2 from the honourable member from the NDP, and we've got that ball rolling, so we're going to just keep pushing our luck, and we're going to then go into and support possibly the amendment that the member from Calgary Fish Creek is going to bring forward. So, having said that, Mr. Chair, I am encouraged at what has been brought forward. While it is not exactly the fixed election date that we've been looking at specifically, I think this is an opportunity to start the ball rolling, get the discussion going, and I look forward to bringing another amendment forward. So with those remarks, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to hear who else is going to talk.